Okay, like I said in my last update, still grading, almost caught up. I'm here to do an update for the June 23rd and 24th discussions, which I won't have a lot to say. You know, June 24th was the memes, and I was really impressed by everyone's creativity. I got quite a chuckle out of many of the memes that you posted and the funny images that you posted. So I really enjoyed that. I hope you guys enjoyed that exercise too. I know this summer class has been a slog. It's been a marathon of grading every day for me, and I know it's been just as much work for you producing all this stuff for me to grade. And so I'm sympathetic to that, and I hope that this was a bit of a lighter, easier, more fun day. And it seemed like, based on the creativity that you obviously put into the assignment, that it's something that clicked with you. But yeah. So I appreciate everyone, putting their best creative foot forward, and I really enjoyed the memes. As for June 23rd, about the mass media revolution, I want to sort of talk about that in connection to the mass media revolution that we've experienced in our own times with social media. The people that we were discussing on June 23rd were experiencing in the 20s, which is when the discussion specified, they're experiencing mass revolution, a revolution in mass media and radio and film mostly. Access to movies at the theater, and there would be another mass media revolution with the advent of television and the explosion of in-home television in the late 1940s and early 1950s. But we experienced our own mass communications revolution in the form of what some people call Web 2.0, or social media, the dynamic web. The web composed not of static information, but of dynamically generated information, in which the consumer of the web page also became the producer. So in Web 1.0, that paradigm of internet production, the web was sort of divided into producers and consumers, and bloggers or whatever, the people who made web pages, web designers, did the production, and then the rest of us did the consumption. And Web 2.0 sort of flipped that model on its head and said, the people who are the producers are also going to be the consumers, and vice versa. And so in Facebook doesn't come up with Facebook posts. They're just a platform, a medium through which your posts are conveyed to others. And so this had a multiplicative effect on the amount of content being generated. You went from a very small minority of producers producing content for a majority of users to a much, much larger cadre of people producing content for Facebook and Blogspot and Twitter and whatever else, YouTube. That came with its own implications that parallel the anxieties that people were having about their children getting access to all kinds of media, especially black, racially coded media that they didn't want their children getting access to. But we had similar anxieties about the kind of media people were now getting access to through social media. There are of course many differences. One being that the kind of content that was being produced by radio and then later television had regulatory oversight. There were federal bodies monitoring what could and couldn't be said on the radio. There's also corporations who run the radio stations, who produce the content for radio and television, who are closely monitoring it because they need it to have mass appeal, needed to not offend people or divide their consumer base or to irritate their consumer base. And then there's a third sort of source of regulatory oversight for those kinds of mass communications, which are the advertisers that are advertising on TV, and they don't want their products being juxtaposed up against unsavory content or politically divisive content. And so the corporate advertisers are also putting a lot of pressure on the content makers to make a certain kind of morally generic, morally inoffensive content. In Web 2.0, whenever the production of content was democratized and everybody becomes a content maker, and you're not profiting off of the Facebook post that you're posting that Facebook is forwarding. Now they've begun to monetize those things, but you have to go viral basically to make any money off of a post. But you're not beholden to any advertiser. You can say whatever you want, and actually, they sort of reverse the moral valence of content, where before there was a strong societal and economic pressure on morally safe content, politically safe, politically neutral content. And now, under the regime of social media, there's actually an incentive through the possibility of virality and the social and sometimes financial capital that virality can produce to be as inflammatory as humanly possible, to be as emotionally agitative as humanly possible. And so that creates quite a different media landscape. The mass media revolution that we've all lived through comes with quite a different media and especially moral landscape and political landscape than the one of the 1930s, 40s, 50s. The other thing that's different is that mass media revolution was mass in scope, mass in reach. It's able to reach basically every American. Every time a movie comes out, every American can see it. Every time something goes on the radio, especially on the syndicated radio, it hits every American's ears pretty much. And our mass media revolution was, similarly mass in scope. In fact, everything went global. Social media sort of globalized the reach of mass communications, except there's a difference comes with the content. Their content was also global. So when the same movie gets projected everywhere. In our mass media revolution, the content is very niche. With a few exceptions of virality, for the most part, you're not getting the same content that your friends are getting. Everybody's content is specifically tailored to their own tastes based on the algorithms' understanding of their own preferences and based on who they've liked, who they've followed, what pages they've followed, who they've befriended, and so on and so forth. And so you have this interesting contrast where you have the globalization of reach, but an increasingly localization of content. And so that has its own implications. So just my point is, we experience our own mass communications revolution during our lifetime, and it's helps us better understand the mass communications revolution of the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s if we think about it in terms compare and contrast it to our own mass media revolution. So that's all I have to say about the June 23rd and 24th discussions. Keep up the good work. Still enjoying grading everything you've written.